This gaming laptop can be upgraded without touching a screwdriver, it's smashing performance records, and most importantly, it blasts out 360 degrees of RGB lighting. ASUS clearly knows that more RGB equals more FPS. This is their new Strix Scar 16. But is it actually worth it, or is it just an overpriced glow stick? Let's break it down in this review. The Scar 16 instantly looks different from any other gaming laptop. Surely we must finally be at the endgame for RGB lighting with a 360 degree light bar, not to mention the lid logo, while the rest of the lid has the same customizable LED lighting that the older Zephyrus models used to have, allowing you to flex on people walking by, because you'll never see it unless you've got the lid closed. The whole laptop has a black finish, metal for the lid and plastic for the interior and bottom panel. Overall build quality feels pretty good. There's only a little flex to the keyboard and lid, nothing major, and the screen doesn't wobble when typing. The hinges feel sturdy and I didn't see any obvious flex, even if I push them back harder than I should. The laptop feels balanced and opens easy with one finger, despite there not being any dedicated spot on the front to grab onto. The Scar 16 is on the thicker side compared to most other 16-inch gaming laptops that we've tested. The laptop by itself weighs in at 6.1 pounds or 2.8 kilos, increasing to 8.3 pounds or 3.8 kilos with a 380 watt charger included. This makes it the heaviest 16-inch gaming laptop that we've tested in the last couple of years. Only the bigger 18-inch beasts weigh more. That said, it moves down a couple of spots when we count the charger, as a couple of older 16-inch models have chunkier chargers, despite being lower powered. My configuration has Intel's Core Ultra 9 275HX processor, Nvidia's RTX 5090 laptop graphics, 64 gigs of RAM, and a 16-inch QHD+ 240Hz mini LED screen. But this is one of the top spec versions. It is available with lower specs for less money with the link below the video, and if it has a good sale, we'll have it listed on our gaminglaptop.deals website so you can get it for the best price. The chiclet keyboard has per key RGB backlighting, and all keys and secondary functions get lit up. Key brightness can be adjusted between 3 levels or turned off with the function and F2 and F3 keys, while the F4 Aura key can be used to cycle through 12 effects. The brightness and effect changes apply to all RGB lighting, so the 360 degree light bar and logo on the lid as well as the keyboard. The Armoury Crate software, the control panel for the laptop, gives you more customization over the lighting, including direction and speed of effects. And you also get to control what shows on the lid, from animated text to GIFs. The keyboard definitely feels nicer to type on compared to the Aorus Master 16 I've recently reviewed. The presses are just more tactile and less mushy. The touchpad feels very nice to use. It's super smooth, clicks nicely, and clicks down anywhere, though it's harder to press up the top. You can hold the top right corner down to turn it into a numpad if you're just dying to do some data entry. Most of the ports are found on the left. From the back, we've got the rectangular power input, 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port, HDMI 2.1 output, a USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type A port, 2 Thunderbolt 5 Type C ports, and a 3.5mm audio combo jack. The right side just has 2 USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports towards the back, nothing else. And there aren't any ports on the back either. Both Thunderbolt 5 ports can be used to charge the laptop with up to 100 watts. And they both have DisplayPort support for connecting monitors. Both the Type-C ports and the HDMI port all connect directly to the Nvidia graphics whether Optimus is on or off. My only issue is that I didn't have any issues with the ports, because I'm a right-handed mouse user. Good luck if you're left-handed, as anything you plug in is way more likely to get in your way. You can get inside without any tools. Simply slide the notch towards the front to the side, and then pull the bottom panel to the front. Inside, we've got the battery down the front, 2 memory slots underneath this cover towards the middle, installed M.2 SSD on the right, and a free M.2 slot on the left. The only thing you can't get to without tools is Wi-Fi. To get to that, you've got to remove 16 Phillips head screws. Then you can pry this second bottom panel off. I'll leave a link to the tools I use for this below. Just watch out for the ribbon cable that connects it to the motherboard for the RGB light bar. I don't like the ribbon cable design, but I'll let it slide as you only have to deal with it if you're changing Wi-Fi. And that'll be far less likely considering it already comes with the best Wi-Fi 7 option currently available, with one of the fastest Wi-Fi speeds we've measured so far. The speeds from the installed 2TB PCIe Gen 4 SSD are excellent. ASUS only seem to sell it with a Gen 4 drive, but both M.2 slots support faster Gen 5 if you're after more speed. Both SSD slots have their QLatch system, which also means swapping M.2 drives doesn't need tools either. The first time I've ever seen something like this in a gaming laptop. Although my laptop came with 2 sticks of DDR5 5600 memory, ASUS says it can be upgraded to DDR5 6400, presumably with the new CSO DIMM sticks, but I don't have any yet to test. The upgrade score is excellent, because I gave it a whole extra point for the innovative toolless design to get inside. All other brands need to pay attention and copy that design. Otherwise, it's got 2 memory slots, 2 PCIe Gen 5 M.2 storage slots, which can both fit double-sided drives, and upgradable Wi-Fi. Granted, it's a little more involved to get to compared to the rest of the more commonly accessed components. The Scar has 4 speakers in total, some below the screen and others underneath down the front. They sound decent, definitely above average and clear with some bass, without any major wrist rest vibrations. The Latencymon results weren't great in our 5-minute idle test. It also plays this sound on boot, but you can disable it through the software or BIOS. The Scar 16 is powered by a 4-cell 90Wh battery. Panel power saver is enabled by default, which automatically lowers the screen's refresh rate to 60Hz when you unplug the charger to save power. This is why the screen flashes black, and it goes back to 240Hz when you plug back in. You can enable battery care mode through the ASUS software to limit the maximum charge level to 80%, which helps improve the longevity of the battery. Or you could also enable eco mode through Armory Crate, which disables the NVIDIA graphics and may help improve battery life if you don't need the power-hungry NVIDIA GPU. Battery life was fairly average with the screen on 1-zone mode, lasting for just over 5 hours in our YouTube video playback test and an hour and a half with a game running, so not too different compared to the previous Strix G16 we tested with the same sized battery, and nowhere near as good compared to some of ASUS's AMD-based options. The Scar 16 lost 33% of its battery while asleep for 24 hours. But this isn't a fair comparison with the other laptops, as it depends on the size of the laptop's battery. Here's how much battery power was lost on average per hour. So although the Master 16 appeared to have 2% more charge after the test, the drain rates were almost the same. It just has a larger 99Wh battery to draw from. Let's check out thermals next. The CPU and GPU are covered by a vapor chamber cooler with Thermal Grizzly Conductonaut Extreme Liquid Metal on both. There are 3 fans, 2 in the usual spots, plus a third one that blows cool air over the middle and out the back. Air only gets exhausted out of the back, so no hot mouse hands while gaming. In fact, the thin vents on the sides are actually for air intake. ASUS's Armory Crate software allows us to change between different performance modes, which from lowest to highest are silent, performance, turbo, and manual. Both turbo and manual modes apply this overclock to the GPU, but only manual mode lets you customize it. Manual mode also lets you customize CPU and GPU power limits, temperature limits, and gives you some control over the fan curves. Whenever we've tested manual mode, all power and temp sliders were maxed out with fans on 100% speeds for best results. The internal temperatures were fine at idle. The rest of the results are from combined CPU and GPU stress tests, which aim to represent a worst-case full-load scenario. But it's not really getting hot in most cases, with the GPU chilling in the low 80-degree range. Closing the lid was only a little warmer, so no problem if you want to dock the laptop. Interestingly, using a basic metal stand didn't improve the temperatures, but the cooling pad I test with, linked below, did. The CPU gets hotter if we set the fans to full speed in manual mode, but if we also max out the cooling pad's fans, we can bring it back down a fair amount. It's just way too loud, as you'll hear soon. Basically, turbo mode limits the CPU power limit to 55 watts, while the GPU runs just above 160 watts. The CPU can use much more power in manual mode, but it comes at the expense of taking away from GPU power. That said, this only seems to happen when running a combined CPU and GPU stress test like this to fully load it up. With an actual game running, that much CPU power isn't needed, and we found that the GPU would get more power than this. The ASUS website says that max wattage in manual mode is 80 watts for the CPU and 175 watts for the GPU, so not sure why mine preferred the CPU so much, but if you do need CPU power, manual mode is able to get all of the P-cores up to 4.8 GHz with the GPU still performing fairly well. Silent mode, on the other hand, limits the GPU to just 35 watts, resulting in much lower clock speeds. We can see this in action when looking at how the Scar 16 performs in an actual game with the different performance modes. I've got the native results without upscaling shown in purple, and a demonstration of the performance improvement that's possible by setting DLSS 4 to balanced in red. Silent mode is performing much worse compared to the other modes, while turbo and manual modes weren't really that much better than the quieter performance mode. The CPU can use more power in a CPU-only workload like Cinebench, where the GPU is idle. It is possible to apply a small undervolt in the BIOS, but this only increased multi-core performance by almost 2%. Not much, but I suppose it's free extra performance. Even without the undervolt, it broke our record for multi-core performance in this test, scoring over 5% higher than the similarly sized Aorus Master 16 with the same processor. An excellent result. Performance lowers if we unplug the charger and instead run off of battery power, but the Scar 16 is still the best performing result we've ever recorded, both in terms of single and multi-core performance. And this is despite the Armory Crate software limiting itself to performance mode when unplugged from the charger. As for keyboard temps, most laptops I test are in the low 30 degrees Celsius range on the keyboard at idle, but the Scar 16 was a little below this. It gets warmer with the stress test running, but ultimately it's still fairly cool with the middle warm spot in the mid-30s. This continues in the higher performance mode. It's only a little warm up the back, but you don't need to touch there anyway. Turbo mode was impressively cool. It's bringing air in through the keyboard, keeping the sides in the mid-20s. It's not much different in manual mode with the fans maxed out. Still cool. There is a hotspot on the screen, but that's not due to air exhaust, so I'll talk about it in the screen section. The hottest point of the keyboard in turbo mode was quite cool compared to other laptops. Very impressive stuff, but it doesn't mean much if the fans blow you into another dimension. Let's have a listen. The fans were only just audible when idling in the lowest silent mode. Performance mode is a good sweet spot in terms of fan noise and performance, but turbo mode with the cooling pad at 800 RPM was a little quieter and cooler compared to not using it. Just don't max out the pad and laptop fans at the same time, because that's insanely loud. I'd say the fan noise is pretty reasonable in turbo mode compared to other laptops, especially when you remember that it's also beating a lot of those louder and bigger models in terms of raw performance too, while maintaining a cool keyboard. Alright, we need to talk about the mini LED screen, because it's kind of weird. Most of the time, it looks amazing. There's a new layer on the screen that ASUS says reduces reflections and improves contrast. Color gamut was excellent. The colors are very accurate out of the box as it comes Pantone calibrated, and the brightness is amazing, but that might be a bug. The screen has 3 different modes in the Armory Crate software. One zone basically makes all of the mini LED dimming zones act as one, like a normal LCD panel. Multi-zone balance is recommended for regular desktop usage, while multi-zone strong is recommended for gaming and watching movies. The last 2 modes make use of the mini LED panel's 2000 plus dimming zones, but I still noticed a halo effect around lighter content, which was a bit annoying depending on the content. At least you have the option of stopping that with the one zone mode though. ASUS advertises the panel at 1200 nits, and with Optimus on, ours was very close to this with the multi-backlight zone set to strong, as shown by the green bar. The other modes were around the 600 to 800 nit point, so still fairly bright, but sometimes it gets brighter when Optimus is off. I'm not sure if this is a bug, because it doesn't always happen. Sometimes when I turn Optimus off, the panel goes super bright for a few seconds, then back to normal, but most of the time, it just stays extra bright at up to 2000 nits in strong mode. Crazy stuff. It honestly feels blinding. If you recall our screen hotspots earlier, I was wondering if this was to do with the panel using too much power to light it up so bright. The bottom of the screen was about 10 degrees Celsius warmer with Optimus off with an all-white image showing. Honestly, I've got no idea if that extra heat is gonna be bad for long term, but based on my discussions with ASUS, it seems like it might be a driver issue that will get fixed. So it's probably a case that we shouldn't be expecting 2000 nits with Optimus off. Expect 1200 and anything else is just a bonus. Even if we don't factor in whatever's going on with Optimus off, the Scar 16 is still the brightest laptop panel we've ever tested when in the multi-zone strong mode. Plus that's in SDR mode too. Most other panels are brighter in HDR, but that wasn't the case with the Scar, at least for sustained brightness. Backlight bleed wasn't too bad. My panel had a patch towards the top right, but this will vary between panels. Panel overdrive is enabled by default in the Armoury Crate software to lower screen response time. On average, we're looking at a 4.45 millisecond average grey-to-grey screen response time, which is decent for a 240Hz panel, but also kind of amazing when it comes to mini LED, but it depends. Here's how a transition from black to grey looks on my oscilloscope with the mini LED set to one zone mode. Basically, it's kinda normal and easy to measure. But then here's how the same transition looks with multi-zone set to balance or strong. I think what we're seeing here is dimming zones getting brighter, overshooting, then coming back down. This makes it much harder to measure accurately, but it would mean a slow response time of close to 10 milliseconds in this transition with the dimming zones in use. Like I said, it's a good result for a mini LED screen, but is it really a mini LED screen when I've had to test it in one zone mode to make my measuring work? Mini LED panels are the most annoying for me to test response time with, as they all seem to behave a bit differently. And that's why most of them have slower results due to the way dimming zones work. The Scar 16 would be closer to these results with multi-zone balance or strong enabled. So if you want best response times, stick with one zone mode. Despite not having the fastest screen, the Scar 16 has broken our record in the total system latency test, which is the amount of time between a mouse click and when a gunshot fire appears on the screen in Counter-Strike 2. In fact, all the new RTX 50 series laptops we've tested are now at the top of the graph, so there's clearly a trend here. The Scar 16 has advanced Optimus, so you can swap between Optimus on or off without rebooting to get optimal game performance. It's also got a traditional muck switch available through software, but that one needs a reboot. G-Sync is only available when Optimus is off, but Adaptive Sync is available from the integrated graphics when Optimus is on, so either way you get tear-free gameplay. There's a 1080p camera above the screen, and it has IR for Windows Hello Face Unlock. Here's how the camera and microphones look and sound, and this is what it sounds like while typing on the keyboard. Alright, let's find out what ASUS's Scar 16 can do in games. We've tested these settings in 3 new games, with and without ray tracing, at 4K, 1440p, and 1080p resolutions. Cyberpunk 2077 was tested with the game's benchmark, and at 4K native, so no ray tracing or upscaling, it's the best result we've measured so far. That remains true at 1440p too, with a slightly bigger lead compared to the other similarly spec'd laptops we've tested so far. And at 1080p, there's not really any noteworthy performance differences with the 2 Aorus laptops, all of which perform much better compared to Razer's thinner Blade 16. We're still able to get above 60 FPS with ray tracing on Ultra and DLSS on performance mode at 4K, but it's not really that different to one of the best 4090 laptops from last gen. In fact, Alienware's M18R2 was slightly ahead in terms of average FPS at 1440p. RTX 5090 who? They're pretty close at 1080p. Not that you should be buying this tier of hardware for 1080p gaming. Black Myth Wukong was also tested with the game's benchmark. 4K high settings ran below 50 FPS, so you'd probably want to use DLSS for a better experience. It's not really all that different to other similarly spec'd laptops at 1440p or 1080p. I doubt you would be able to tell which laptop you were gaming on in a blind test. 4K high settings with ray tracing on low was at least above the magical typical 60 FPS with DLSS. But again, there's not really a noticeable difference in frame rate compared to other high-end laptops, and it's the same deal at the lower 1440p and 1080p resolutions as well. Alan Wake 2 performed the best on the Scar 16 at 4K, but again, we're talking about a 1 FPS lead over other similarly spec'd laptops, and only 4 FPS ahead of the last-gen RTX 4090. And again, performance is great at 1440p and 1080p, but there's not a whole lot of difference when compared to the other laptops. Ray tracing plus DLSS on performance mode gets us near 60 FPS at 4K, and with a higher 1% low result than the others, so less dips in performance with the Scar here. And then at 1440p and 1080p, the Scar was the best result measured so far, but the difference is only small. Here are the 3D Mark results. Content creator results were good with a new record in Adobe Premiere, though better Photoshop performance was possible from last-gen hardware. Unfortunately, the DaVinci Resolve test kept crashing. The BIOS is nice to look at, but there isn't much customization available compared to other brands like MSI. You can at least apply a slight undervolt. As mentioned earlier, Linux support was tested with an Ubuntu 24.10 live CD. By default, the keyboard, touchpad, speakers, camera, and Wi-Fi work, though Wi-Fi could only see my 5 GHz network, not 6 GHz. Ethernet didn't work at all, so it probably needs a driver. Keyboard shortcuts for adjusting all RGB brightness, adjusting volume, and screen brightness all work. Pricing and availability will change over time, so check the link below the video for updates and current sales. And if the Scar 16 does have a good sale, we'll add it to our gaminglaptop.deals website. We update that every day to include all of the latest sales. So make sure that you check it out regularly to save money on your next gaming laptop with that link below. At the time of recording in late April, the ASUS Scar 16 with RTX 5080 graphics is available for $3,300 US, while the RTX 5090 version I've tested in this video, but with half the RAM, costs an extra $1,000. I'm still waiting to get the right laptops that I need to fairly compare the 5080 and 5090 in game performance. Make sure that you're subscribed for that. But if I had to guess, that $1,000 extra for the RTX 5090 probably isn't going to be worth it for a lot of people, unless you really need the extra VRAM or extra NVENC encoder or something like that. So is ASUS's new Scar 16 worth considering? Let's quickly recap the good and the bad. The Scar 16 was smashing performance records left and right, all while remaining cool to the touch. And without crazy loud fans either. It's hands down the easiest laptop to upgrade I've ever seen thanks to its toolless design. And it's got the brightest mini LED screen we've ever tested. And that's even if we don't count the weird extra brightness issue. But it's not all perfect. Nothing in life is. It's heavy for a 16-inch gaming laptop. The port layout isn't ideal for left-handed gamers, and the strange mini LED brightness behavior could be a long-term concern if it's not fixed. Though to be fair, I have no idea what the temps it's rated to run at are, but it's definitely warmer than others. And more heat is generally bad long term. Plus, like most mini LED panels, there's still a bit of annoying halo effect depending on what you're looking at, but at least you can disable that with the one zone mode, which is a nice feature that a lot of other gaming laptops with mini LED screens don't have. All things considered, ASUS's Scar 16 has a lot to offer, if you can handle the weight and the high price tag. Pricing should lower over time though, so check those links below for the latest deals. And if the Scar 16 sounds too heavy for you, then check out Razer's thinner Blade 16 over here. It's still a high performer, but it's noticeably lighter. It's got an OLED screen instead of mini LED, and the price isn't actually that different either. I'll see you over in that one.